Hey everyone, Ethys here. I'm probably playing Triad in the background, so you can watch me play Triad while you play Triad. Knowing me, I'm probably in the middle of some kind of amazing losing streak. I played a lot of Final Fantasy VIII. I'm still not very good at Triad. So this week's been a bit of a roller coaster. I tore some cartilage between my ribs last Thursday, and I've been having a bit of trouble talking and breathing, so I'm sorry about the relative silence between then and now, but 2.51 has landed. The Gold Sorcerer is here. I think that for the most part, it's everything that we expected. Zodiac Zetas are here, and I think that they, on the other hand, are far simpler a step than anyone was expecting, which is excellent. So I completely forgot somewhere in the past week that 2.51 was not actually going to include part 2 of Before the Fall. So I was pretty excited for some more story content to talk about, then a little disappointed when I remembered that we will in fact be waiting for 2.55, which I imagine will be released pretty close to the threshold of Heavensward, so to keep the hype train hype-fueled. But oh me of little faith, someone smuggled a little gold mine of lore into the saucer for us. So we already know that our mount guide in-game provides us with flavor text that illuminates some interesting pieces of trivia about each of our mounts, and Triple Triad has brought something very similar. You've probably noticed that each card contains a short description, some far richer than others. I'm not going to read them all out to you, but interesting and previously unconfirmed facts include that blue dragons can live for over 1,000 years, and that all dragonkind are indeed descendants of Midgard-Sorma, that dodos are natives of the island of Maslea and were introduced to Eorzea by migrating Kikern, and that the flying black chocobos are rumoured to still live within the vastly unexplored valleys of Abalathia Spine, which in my view very nearly confirms this as an area for Heavensward. It's certainly not the Great Library, but this is a pretty good resource for my fellow lore junkies. I would definitely encourage you to pay attention to the description of every card that you win, because you'll probably learn something from many of them. The most interesting among these to me right now is actually something that was hinted to us when we first earned the Ahriman mount, but that I haven't given much thought to since that time. From the description of the mount, scholars have discovered that there is a strict hierarchy amongst Voidsent consisting of 12 distinct tiers. Ahrimans are believed to fall into the 5th. The only other reference we have seen to these tiers before now was the elite mark build description for Mind Flayer. Of the 12 tiers of the Voidsent hierarchy put forth by scholars, the Mind Flayer falls into the 5th. Now, each of the Voidsent for which there is a Triple Triad card also makes some reference to these tiers. Flans are of the 10th, Bombs the 11th and their subclass Grenades of the 10th, Ahrimans in various occupying the 5th and 4th, the Succubi are of the 3rd and 4th. Assuming that Ascians alone occupy the 1st tier, we can speculate with some confidence the general range that the Voidsent we have so far encountered might fall into, and that their unique versions are probably a tier or two higher still. We can expect this hierarchy to fill out as more cards are added to the game and more Voidsent are represented, and it will continue to prove a really valuable resource for purposes of categorizing and taxonomy, but it will also establish a place for creatures which not everyone was convinced were actually Voidsent, such as the Flan, quite clearly within this spectrum. The biggest question for me, and one which I would love to see discussed below, is precisely by whom and under what criteria are these classifications being made? The most ready and perhaps most intuitive answer is that this is the way in which the Voidsent organize themselves. The Ahriman description seems to imply this by claiming that scholars discovered this system, but the Mind Flayer description contradicts this by stating that the hierarchy was put forth by scholars. This might seem trivial, but there is a clear and important distinction in the implications of each of these statements. I for one do not believe that the denizens of the Void naturally arrange themselves in some neat social pyramid, and if they do, we probably don't collect their census data. From what we've experienced, the Voidsent that are intelligent enough to have a goal tend to work independently from their peers, and at no point do they themselves make reference to this hierarchy. We've seen Succubi with Ahriman thralls, but we've also seen Ahriman like Angamainu who are clearly much further up the food chain than Succubi like Halicarnassus. I think that this hierarchy is something that has been devised by Eorzean or Charlayan scholars to make sense of the scope and variety of phenomena that seeps from the Void into our world, and that the ranking is made in reference to their perceived intelligence or threat. So it is a fairly general and fluid spectrum. We posit that flares occupy the 5th tier, but I'm sure that if we were to encounter a particularly dangerous or powerful flare, there will be nothing keeping us from categorizing it within the 3rd or 2nd. Anyway, I'd love to see some debate or some different theories regarding the source of this hierarchy, or where particular Voidsent might fit on it. If you've won yourself a Triad card with a particularly interesting or illuminating description, then please comment below. If you're enjoying my channel, then please sub, like, follow me on Twitter. If you're hanging out for the next episode of Armoire, it should be up within the next few days, but until then, thanks for watching, and please gamble responsibly.